Tonight on NewsWatch, the so-called polar vortex that's plaguing much of America. A look at when temperatures will begin to warm up.
Plus, pushing for a peace deal in the Middle East, why some say U.S. efforts could hurt Israel.
And the Supreme Court gears up to weigh in on pro-life protesters outside abortion clinics. All this and more tonight on NewsWatch. Good evening. I'm Mark Martin.
And I'm Wendy Griffith. Well, much of America is seeing dangerously cold conditions tonight. Some places never even made it out of the negative degrees during the day, Mark.
Yeah, that's right. The low temperatures forced some to stay home and stay warm as roads and schools closed in many areas. Jennifer Wishon has more from the nation's capital in tonight's top story.
The nation's capital and much of the country resembles the North Pole. A polar vortex is to blame, a blast of frigid Arctic air that's making it dangerously cold.
Real cold. First time I've seen it this cold since the late 70s, early 80s.
Got on a tank top, a shirt, a sweater, and a jacket.
I haven't been this cold since I was a fourth grader in 1984. I'm wearing like 8 jackets. This is all the jackets I own, and I'm so freezing.
The historic low temperatures are wreaking havoc across the country.
Days like this, I wonder why I left Georgia. You know, I mean, it gets colder there than people think, but not like this. It's pretty brutal.
You can't even walk in this, man. You can't even sleep. You can't do nothing. We're ready for the summertime.
It is what it is. Thank God it's not snowing.
Many schools were closed or delayed, and many people seem to be heeding warnings about the potentially deadly cold. Normally bustling capital city looks more like a ghost town. In Washington, Jennifer Wishon, CBN News.
And for more on this frigid weather, we turn now to Weather Bell's Joe Bastardi. Joe, we keep hearing about the polar vortex. What is the polar vortex?
Well, it's a collapsing of the Arctic vortex into the United States, specifically the Great Lakes, and it happens. As a matter of fact, I'm kind of amused by this whole thing because at Weather Bell, I wrote this 10 days ago. It's called An Anatomy of an Arctic Attack, exactly how this is going to happen. And it's going to happen again probably in 10 to 12 days. And the reason it's happening is because of the overall setup of the hemispheric weather pattern. And what happens, Wendy, is I go back and look at past weather patterns and say, wow, if it happened before, it's going to happen again. It's strictly cyclical in nature. So if you go back and look at history, there's nothing mysterious as to why this is happening. As a matter of fact, if you want to go back and look at 2 great examples of it, go back to mid-January 1977. And by the way, that particular attack had people saying an ice age was coming. And look at the time Ronald Reagan was inaugurated the second time. We had that come right through the Great Lakes. And that was some of the most ferocious cold the country's ever seen. 28 below zero in Chicago. They had to cancel the outdoor inauguration because temperatures were only around 1 or 2 degrees above zero that Sunday in Washington, D.C. So people trying to make more of this than what it actually is, which is a natural phenomena, must be meteorological know-nothings. I mean, I've heard people start talking about, well, global warming is causing this. So how come we've had all these other record cold outbreaks before? Why were they not global warming? And now this is global warming. And how can cooling be warming? And if you get enough cooling, is that going to stop the warming? I mean, this is turning into a nutcase with all this stuff going on.
I'm getting a headache, Joe. Hey, listen, you're up in State College, Pennsylvania, where it is so cold, you have lost power. So you are actually coming to us without heat in your home, I'm understanding.
The heat's back on now, but one of the things that should alarm people is all the loss of electricity and the testing of the power grids with what is a formidable cold outbreak, but is not the worst cold outbreak we've seen in this country in the last 40 or 50 years. Do you realize in February 1934, it hit 15 below zero in New York City? I'm not talking wind chill now. And we've had air masses worse than this into the United States. And you've got to ask yourself, well, what is going on with the electric grid that there were so many reports of power outages? And it's not the electric companies. They have their hands tied. And even in Texas, for instance, their grid was being tested. Hydro-Quebec, I realize Quebec is not here in the United States, but they're running out of electricity. I got to tell you something, folks, and you have to understand this. It is far worse as far as energy consumption goes, to have cold weather than warm weather. And falling asleep at the switch because somehow some people have convinced people that global warming is going to keep us warm all the time. This is utter nonsense.
All right, Joe Bastardi with weatherbelt.com. We so appreciate it. Stay warm. Thanks, Joe.
And you enjoy the weather. It's the only weather you've got. Remember that.
In other news, Republicans joined Democrats in the U.S. Senate today to advance debate on an unemployment benefits bill. President Obama praised the move, saying it's an important first step. Gary Lane has more.
President Obama was pleased with the bipartisan vote to advance his first order of business for 2014. At the White House Tuesday afternoon, he said an extension is needed because a lot of Americans are still struggling from the effects of the recession.
Unemployment insurance has been a vital economic lifeline. For a lot of people, it's the only source of income they've got to support their families while they look for a new job. These aren't folks who are just sitting back, waiting for things to happen. They're out there actively looking for work. They desperately want work.
The unemployment benefits extension expired 3 days after Christmas. President Obama and the Democrats would like to see it extended another 3 months at a cost of $6.4 billion. The bill restores up to 47 weeks of unemployment benefits, an average of $256 weekly to more than 1 million Americans. But conservatives argue the nation can ill afford more debt or the creation of a new costly entitlement program. Republicans like Kentucky Senator Rand Paul say they'll support the unemployment benefits extension only if Congress finds a way to pay for it. Paul said he thinks it's wrong to borrow money from China or to simply print up money for it. Regardless, the president insists Congress needs to respond quickly.
Congress should pass this bipartisan plan right away, and I will sign it right away. And more than 1 million Americans across the country will feel a little hope right away.
Gary Lane, CBN News.
Janet Yellen will be the next head of the Federal Reserve. The Senate confirmed her in a 56-26 vote late Monday. Yellen is expected to continue the Fed's policy of easy money and low interest rates. Many Republicans question if that has really helped the economy, while others say the Fed helped prevent a much worse recession after the financial crisis of 2008.
People are running into big roadblocks over relatively minor changes to the new Obamacare websites. For instance, parents trying to add a new baby to their health insurance will find it more difficult. With private insurance, consumers simply notified their insurer and made the change. The Associated Press reports it's not that simple under the Affordable Care Act.
There's a third party involved, the government, and see any of these changes could affect what the government pays for your care and what you pay for your care and the kind of subsidy that you get with your premiums. So therefore, it's not as simple as just calling the insurer. You have to bring the government into it too.
Right now, the healthcare.gov website cannot handle such updates. That feature was postponed as the government scrambled to fix all the technical problems during the site's overhaul. After the federal system is ready to process changes, parents will have to contact the government to formally bring their records up to date.
Turning overseas now, Secretary of State John Kerry left Israel on Monday but is expected back next week. It's all part of a major U.S. effort to broker an agreement between Israelis and Palestinians. As Chris Mitchell reports from Jerusalem, some believe Kerry's efforts might put Israel's security in jeopardy.
Kerry says his efforts are not mission impossible.
And which I think presents us now with the possibility of trying to find a framework agreement which would really lay out the end game and lay out the framework for the major issues to guide the negotiations from this point forward.
It's not an interim agreement, it's not a transitional period, it's beyond us. We're working hard to achieve an agreement on all core issues.
Those core issues include security, borders, and the fate of Jerusalem. One reported issue is the proposal that Israel give up the strategic Jordan Valley to the Palestinians. Yet 3 U.S. senators, former Senate colleagues of Secretary Kerry, told a Jerusalem press conference recent history shows when Israel gives up land, it puts the country at risk. After Israel left Gaza in 2005, Hamas and other terror groups have fired thousands of rockets into Israel.
Here's the one thing that I think dominates the thinking in Israel. Once you withdraw, then the ability to go back is almost impossible. You know, once you give up your ability to kind of chart your own destiny, look at Gaza. What's the chance of going back into Gaza militarily?
Former Israeli Ambassador Danny Ayalon told CBN News he believes the agreement would base a future Palestinian state on the West Bank, including Jerusalem.
I believe that the deal that he offers is a 67 borders, or the basis of 67, which swaps on a 1-to-1 ratio. It would include Jerusalem. As far as Kerry is concerned, this is what I believe. That should be for recognition by the Palestinians of a Jewish state.
While Kerry puts U.S. prestige on the line to create a Palestinian state, some are concerned that Palestinians see the negotiations only as one stage in their long-range plan. A senior Palestinian official, Abba Zaik, told Syrian TV a Palestinian state based on the 1967 lines was only the beginning. He said even the most extreme among us, Hamas or the fighting forces, want a state within the 67 borders. Afterward, we will have something to say, because the inspiring idea cannot be achieved all at once, rather in stages. Many interpret the inspiring idea as the elimination of the State of Israel. Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Jerusalem.
Syria has removed its first batch of chemical weapons from the country. That, according to the United Nations. The move is a crucial step in the international operation to rid Syria of its chemical arsenal by mid-year. It comes as the UN says it will stop updating its official death count from the Syrian civil war. It says lack of access on the ground and inability to verify source material are what's keeping them from updating the figures. The last official count from late July was 100,000 lives lost.
Coming up, the growing call to protect children from predators within the church.
In 2008, my husband Gary departed for heaven. I was still grieving. And then to find out I had cancer, I began praying, God, how do I do this? Where do I do this? Cancer Treatment Centers of America was the place. Dr. Neelam outlined a plan that would take care of my mind and my body, and she prayed with me.
For Bible-believing Christians, we're able to pray with them in a much deeper way as they begin to really rely upon their faith.
At Cancer Treatment Centers of America, we believe in the power of faith and prayer as indispensable allies in the fight against complex and advanced stage cancer.
I'm back in Telluride on the mountain skiing. I feel strong and healthy.
Advanced medicine and technology.
And I am a survivor.
The warm embrace of the Spirit and the power of prayer.
These are happy tears.
Please go to cancercenter.com/faith. Appointments available now. Cancer Treatment Centers of America. Care that never quits.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
A group of Satanists is moving forward with a proposal to place a satanic monument on the Oklahoma State House steps, and they've just released a rendering of what it might look like. The 7-foot statue depicts the goat-headed horned figure seen here. It also has other symbols often used by the occult. The New York-based group, the Satanic Temple, has just formally submitted their application to build the statue. They say it would serve to, quote, separate religion from superstition. The Satanic Temple says the decision to display a Ten Commandments monument at the State House opens the door for other monuments. Conservative leaders in Oklahoma believe their request to build the statue will be denied.
Studies have shown child abuse in America is much more widespread than people realize. The issue even occurs within the church. Now there's a growing movement to fight against the problem and to help survivors. Heather Sells has that story.
The church should be the last place that parents worry about taking their children. But instead of providing a safe place for kids, child sexual abuse experts say church can actually be dangerous by providing a welcoming environment for predators.
We so focus on issues such as forgiveness and grace. Offenders are drawn to those places.
Former child abuse prosecutor Boz Chavijan says many churches unintentionally attract those who want to prey on children.
Churches are always in need of volunteers. I've never been to a church that was not in need of a volunteer, and churches are very trusting.
To help churches in the fight against this trend, Chavijan began the Grace Initiative, which stands for Godly Response to Abuse in the Christian Environment. In recent years, he's seen progress as believers talk more openly about the problem. But what Chavijan would like to see now, more denominations and local churches developing policies that minister to survivors and protect kids.
You have to know about how offenders think and act so you can stay a step ahead or 2 steps ahead of them.
Often the biggest challenge for churches is learning how to respond to reports of abuse. That's because abusers have often been well-liked and trusted leaders.
When the 13 or 14-year-old kid in the youth group who's caused a lot of trouble in the youth group, who comes from a broken home, who maybe even has had some trouble with the law, when that 14, 15-year-old comes forward and says, this particular person in the church has sexually abused me, and that particular person happens to be an elder or a leader or a well-respected person in the church, how are we going to respond to that? Because that's where I see the breakdown.
Chavijan calls on churches to quickly take sexual abuse reports to the authorities and be prepared to minister to victims, offenders, and their families. This shedding of light on darkness, he says, is the best way for the church to move forward and demonstrate integrity in a fallen world. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Thanks, Heather. Up next, fighting against the bubble zone, how the Supreme Court is taking up the case of protesters outside abortion clinics.
Hello? Is this thing on? Hey, kids, do you love games? And do you love discovering things? Well, do ya?
Then you're gonna love this. It's the new free Superbook Kids Bible app. You can play games, watch videos, find answers to your questions, and a whole lot more. The new Superbook Kids Bible app. Free downloads available on iTunes and Google Play now.
Jim is 38, mortgage, married, 3 great kids. He wants to protect his family with a $500,000 term life insurance policy. What do you think it'll cost him? $100 a month? 60? 40? Actually, none of the above. Jim can get a $500,000 policy from a highly rated insurer for under $19 a month. His secret? SelectQuote. SelectQuote is impartial. They'll comparison shop the pick of insurance companies like these to give you a choice of your best prices. SelectQuote has great savings on term life for women, too. Jim's wife, Deidre, can get a $500,000 policy for under $16 a month. SelectQuote has helped make term life insurance affordable for hundreds of thousands of people since 1985. How about you? Just call this number or go to SelectQuote.com. SelectQuote. We shop, you save.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
The future of Texas' tough new abortion regulations is now in the hands of a federal appeals court. A 3-judge panel from the Fifth Circuit heard arguments Monday on if the state can enforce the new law. The 2013 measure stipulates doctors performing abortions must have admitting privileges at a nearby hospital. It also restricts how doctors administer abortion-inducing drugs. The new requirements led several abortion clinics to close. Planned Parenthood and the Center for Reproductive Rights sued to block those provisions, and a district judge sided with them, calling parts of the law unconstitutional. The case is now being deliberated by that federal appeals court. The measure is being enforced while that is taking place. It's expected arguments over the restrictions will eventually make their way to the Supreme Court. Meanwhile, the High Court is currently deciding on another abortion-related case, this one out of Massachusetts.
A law there forces pro-life protesters to stand at least 35 feet away from abortion clinics. And as Paul Strand explains in tonight's Focus Report, next week the Supreme Court justices will weigh in on whether that's constitutional.
If you try to change a woman's mind about an abortion and cross this line outside a clinic in Massachusetts, you could end up in jail. 7 years ago, the state declared 35-foot bubble zones to keep protesters away from those entering abortion clinics. Now the U.S. Supreme Court will take up whether those zones violate the free speech of Americans who want to talk about abortion, especially with the women who may be going to abort their babies.
It takes away the person-to-person aspect of it and puts you at a distance.
Ray Neary believes pro-life advocates like himself have saved hundreds of babies by getting close enough to the mothers to talk and reason with them. The bubble zone takes that away.
You have to yell at them as though you're in opposition to them, and you're not. You're trying to save that child that's in that womb.
So right here is literally the front line in the battle for American rights, because any pro-life American on this side of that line can say anything they want. But if they step over this line, now it's illegal speech.
We pray that this freedom may be one.
Reverend Paul Schenck fought a similar case all the way to the Supreme Court.
Imagine calling out to someone from 35 feet away in public space, no less. It's impossible to carry on the kind of quiet conversation that a situation that is this dire requires.
Jeff and Tricia Bradford were 5 months away from getting married when they found out they were pregnant, which they thought would be humiliating to acknowledge at their wedding.
We had believed all the lies. There was just a blob of tissue. And so we went to the wedding really not wanting just to embarrass our family.
They hid the killing for 15 years, but now share about it openly. They say they believe someone intervening would have changed their mind about the abortion.
If somebody would have stayed with us, would have stood in the gap, I believe we would have a 20-year-old little girl here today.
Evidence proves a heart-to-heart talk can really make the difference. Marylander Linda Rubus felt God prompt her to call her daughter one night, and Linda discovered her daughter was at an abortion clinic.
I said, honey, God doesn't make mistakes. I said, you need to save this child. You need to save this baby. It'll be a blessing.
Linda's daughter saved her own child and more.
She left there. But before she left, she spoke to 2 other girls there about saving their babies, too.
And science now gives pro-lifers factual information to share what a complex human life is growing within the pregnant woman's body. Linda Potoshnik is another Maryland pro-lifer.
The little baby at 6 weeks has 1 billion cells, for heaven's sakes, and more information within his little body. His DNA has more information than any word ever spoken, every word ever spoken by every human being who's ever lived since the beginning of time.
Meanwhile, the fight goes on in Massachusetts to put a needle in the 35-foot bubble zone law.
I've always said that a woman does not have an abortion because she's pro-choice. She has the abortion because she feels she has no choice. And what the sidewalk counselor is doing is making that last effort to reach out to her in kindness and love and offer her the support she needs to give her child life. Well, you can't do that from 35 feet away.
Paul Strand, CBN News, Boston.
Up next, while most people are putting on winter boots to brave the freezing temperatures, one man is racing up his running shoes. Find out why when we come back.
Announcing an important breakthrough in healthcare that can benefit everyone. If you or anyone you love needs affordable health insurance, regardless of a pre-existing medical condition, call Quick Insurance 123 today and get the immediate relief you deserve. Quick Insurance 123 was created to provide affordable health insurance to all uninsured Americans, with or without pre-existing conditions. This is not a discount card. This is a real insurance program that lets you choose from many affordable health plans, with access to doctors, hospitals, emergency services, and more. So call the number on your screen now and get the health coverage you need, just for calling. As a special bonus, we'll send you a free prescription savings card that could save you up to 85% on your prescriptions. That's right, you could save up to 85% on your prescriptions, just for calling. Call Quick Insurance 123 to find out how you can get affordable health insurance and receive your free prescription savings card, just for calling. Don't wait. Getting a free quote is as easy as 1, 2, 3. Call today.
Attention sleep apnea patients. Are you tired of the expense and hassle of getting your CPAP and BiPAP supplies? Are you fed up with dealing with ill-fitting, leaking, or worn-out masks and straps? Are you worried about the effects that unsanitary tubes, cushions, and filters have on your health? If you said yes to any of these questions, Allied Medical Supply Network has the solution to your problems. You could qualify to have your supplies regularly delivered right to your door at little or no cost to you. That's right, no more inconvenience, no worn-out masks and straps, no more unsanitary equipment, just restful sleep. Call Allied Medical Supply Network today to determine if you may qualify to receive your fresh, brand-name supplies at little or no cost. Don't delay. Call us now to see if you are eligible to save money on regular delivery of your CPAP and BiPAP supplies. Call 1-800-815-9947. That's 1-800-815-9947. Or go to cpapsupplyhelpline.com.
Well, the polar vortex gripping much of the country has forced many people to stay indoors and made simple tasks like driving to work nearly impossible.
Yeah, but one man from Minnesota isn't worried about the sub-zero temperatures. 5 days a week, Jake Sorry bikes, walks, or runs 3 miles to work, even at negative 25 degrees. It's hard to believe any man would want to brave the cold conditions, but Jake even turns down offered rides. Jake works at a store called AeroStitch. The company creates gear for motorcycling and encourages alternate forms of transportation.
I think everyone should try it. It's a different perspective. You see things differently. My work gives me $1 every day that I walk or bike or run. So I have $1 before I clock in.
But at minus 25 degrees, his eyebrows were frozen there. Jake says he's never used a car or bus to get to work at AeroStitch, though he could technically take the bus and still get his $1 a day. The company also pays employees to take public transport. As a matter of your own safety, Jake, take the bus.
Well, I think I did see some icicles hanging from his nostrils.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Oh, snot freezes in that kind of weather, too.
Oh, dear. That's all for this edition of NewsWatch.
Thanks for watching. Have a good night.